to close my closet again. Literally was in there for like 5 seconds. Okay, we're gonna talk about the middle colonies today with my closet open. My wife hollers at me for that. All right. The middle colonies are typically New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. The middle colonies represent the more later colonies. So now we're moving into the era of the British versus the colonists. We're leading into the Revolutionary War. William Penn, Pennsylvania, Quakers, they live in this area right here in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. They dressed plainly and believed that men and women were equal and supported nonviolence and religious tolerance. Unless your team wins the Super Bowl, then you can have a huge riot. Okay, back on task. Philadelphia is created a capital that was a great example of self-government. So you can already see that we are moving really close to self-government. We're moving closer to becoming our own country. The middle colonies are later. The middle colonies are 100% the more modern colonies. They are shipping is huge and farming as well because you could farm in this area right here. But there's amazing ports here in New York. Philadelphia has amazing ports. New Jersey has no ports at all, which is stinks for New Jersey. But the middle colonies' economies are mainly export import. New York is the first colony to bring slaves into the ports in New York City. So when Northerners tell you how wonderful they are, just let them know that New York was the first one to bring slaves in. Pennsylvania is also the first one to outlaw slavery. So they outlaw slavery very, very quick. But again, the middle colonies, they're pretty simple, and I know this is going to be a short video, but staple crops and importing and exporting, that is what the economy is run off of. And it's huge. It's massive. Think about that world economy that we talked about when we talked about the Columbian Exchange. These areas of the world, New York, the epicenter of trade. It was the epicenter of trade before we even had a country. Philadelphia, here. Everything coming into the country is going through Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. And again, when we talk about the war, those cities become important as well. So the middle colonies, I know it was quick and I know it was simple, but the Quakers, Philadelphia, they really were very modern for their time. They outlawed slavery, they believed in gender equality, and they tried another attempt at a perfect society. The last thing that we need to talk about is the Great Lakes region. Now, the Great Lakes region is this area of the world right here, where you can't see because it's blocked. So it's right here, the Great Lakes. Now, believe it or not, these are the colonies, but this area of the world right here is what spurs on the American Revolution. There are fur trappers, and if you ever visit the Upper Peninsula in Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota, fur trapping is massive. It is a massive moneymaker for the French. The French are trapping furs, and they are actually, it doesn't seem like a really good idea, but it was at the time. Fur is huge in Europe, and they're running their furs down the Mississippi out of New Orleans and back to Europe. And the French are the ones who are doing it. But the British decide that they want a piece of that, and it has to do with mercantilism. And I forgot to put mercantilism on here, so you need to write that down. But mercantilism is the idea that a country's wealth is based upon having more exports than imports. It's the balance of trade. It is terrible economics. Free trade is good when it comes to economics, but mercantilism is the idea of the time, and I can't stress how important this concept is. And it's very, very vague, and it's terrible economics, but it's the economics of the time, and it's what leads us down the road of the American Revolution. If a country is exporting, France, they are taking what the British sees as theirs, fur trapping, because these are all British colonies, and they are making tons of money off of it, and the British think that that is their business, and they want a piece of that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what leads us to the French and Indian War. Now, I cut off the colonies. The colonies unit gets cut off at the French and Indian War. The book sees things a little differently, but the colonies gets cut off at the French and Indian War. So, out of all the things I said, what leads us down the road of war is mercantilism. This idea that your power, especially economically, has to do with exporting more than you import. And because the French are fur trapping and making bank off of fur trapping, the British see that as theirs, and that causes a conflict. And it actually continues to be a conflict until the War of 1812. The War of Eight. So we have 100 years of conflict over beaver pellets. And you would be shocked, but beaver pellets play a huge role in our history. All right, so again, the middle colonies. The middle colonies are very thin. There's not much going on. The biggest thing is the ports. The ports are huge. Here, I'm sorry, wrong. Here in New York, here in Philadelphia, those are the two. All of the supplies, everything comes into those ports, and we're getting rich. The colonists are getting rich. Um, they're making lots of money simply by having ports and bringing things in and trading. It's a free market. It's literally in the history of society, the British colonies was the most free society in the entire world until Hong Kong. But there's nobody here that's really dealing with them. It's called salutary neglect, and we'll talk about that later. New York and New Jersey. New Jersey, not much happens there. It's kind of a wasteland until New York City overflows into it. Not a wasteland, but there's not much going on there. And staple crops. So shipping and staple crops are the economies of the time. Corn, wheat, all grows well in Pennsylvania and New York, and there's enough that they can sell it. So it's not like here with the rocky soil. They can sell the crops and they can make money. All right, that's it for the middle colonies, the French fur trappers. Y'all have a great day.